So, Five Nights at Freddy's is a pretty versatile series, and whilst it annoys people such as me that don't get the same grunge, disgusting vibe that the original game provides, I'm glad that a new generation of kids and grown-ups alike are allowed to fall in love with these characters I really enjoyed when I was like 6. Wow, Jesus, I was 6 when the first game came out. I'm now 18. That's slightly nuts. But with a franchise as ever-evolving as Fnaf, you likely have a favourite that's different from someone else. Some people really like Fnaf 4 the most, some people like Pizza Sim, and some maniac probably really loves Security Breach. I know what you are, you degenerate piece of filth. So today I thought I'd talk to you about my favourite Five Nights game, the original, Fnaf 1, to see if it really holds up, or if it's just bad. After a string of failed indie games, Scott Cawthon was desperate for something big to strike him, which is when he made Chipper & Sons Lumber Company. This was surely it, but sadly it wasn't, with reviewers shredding the title apart, with a common critique that the characters Scott modelled looked like murder robots.
Terrifying. You may notice the dead, terrifying, soulless eyes of the background characters. That's a signature of Chip and whatever the fuck it was called, Chipper and Sons. It's just all over the fucking place, and that thing looks like it's gonna kill your children.
Animatronics with dead eyes, blank facial expressions. And with a game being as widely panned as Chipper, Scott genuinely considered quitting. If you're asking my opinion on Chipper, well, I know a lot of fans like being nice to it, but as a game reviewer, yeah, I can see why people didn't like it. Intuitive is not how I'd describe this game. It's very janky. Whilst I can see where the character criticism came from, it really could have been nicer about it. Yeah, these characters are a tad off-putting, but calling them creepy murder robots feels a tad mean-spirited, and I do feel bad for Scott, who was probably so done making games at this point. But in one last-ditch attempt, he used this criticism to his advantage.
Oh, so you think my models look like scary murder robots? Fine, I'll make scary murder robots then! Is this what you wanted, God?
And thus, Five Nights at Freddy's was born. Fun facts, originally this game was going to be funded through Kickstarter, however it was cancelled. You can tell how popular Scott was because this Kickstarter lasted half a week and raised a whopping $0. This is a really good starting point when talking about the game's development because whilst Scott was scarce with details because he was either in early development or he didn't want to spoil the game, there's still a thing or two you can comb through this post. For example, Freddy was originally called Freddy Bear, which explains the origin of his name. It's a pun, like every other animatronic in the game. I guess that makes Freddy's bizarre title make a lot more sense. I kind of prefer Freddy Bear in all honesty, but that's besides the point. Also noted on this page is that you can only close one door at a time, which... yeah, that change makes sense. With a game like Fnaf, which heavily relies on RNG, it's really important that you level the playing field for both your AI and players. Like, obviously you want your AI to be difficult, but you also have to be fair. As you'll see, I think Fnaf does this really well. Anyways, the game launched on August 8th, 2014, as Scott's 26th game of 2014. What the fuck? So the title screen's pretty cool. Title screens are important in games. Sure, they might seem like nothing of value, but a good title screen can do an excellent job at establishing the atmosphere you're attempting to build up, and personally, Fnaf does an excellent job. The droning ambience, Freddy's deadpan stare into the camera, and the simple font choice leaves no cloud in my mind. This is the best one in the whole series. Sure, there are other entries with more complex titles, but sometimes simplicity is key. I can't help but feel like some inspiration was taken from Silent Hill 2. I don't know, I might be looking too deep into it though. So, what's going on in the game? You're the new hire at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, an animatronic-themed restaurant opened somewhere in the mid-70s. In recent times, probably somewhere in the 90s, The restaurant fell upon hard times for seemingly an unknown reason, and you're hired as the night guard to take over for the end of the year. Spend 5 nights at Freddy's, get your paycheck, the restaurant closes, move on. Do something else with your life. It's a pretty simple concept, and yet a lot can be done with it. The presentation of this game is freaking sick. It's probably the reason an entire generation remembers this game. I think a lot of people immediately think of the mascots, so let's start off with that. The designs for the characters are perfect. You have to remember that whilst the theming is totally off for a 90s pizza parlor, it's kind of the point. Freddy's is literally weeks from closing at this point. At least that's what Scott intended at the time. I'm sure book 27 of Fazball's Frights probably retconned that. Freddy is supposed to be cheap and disposable. It's kind of implied at one point it was rich and expensive, but in the 20 years since the establishment opened, it is no longer that. The animatronics in this game are the most well designed in the whole series. They strike the perfect balance of a cute mascot character and a creepy animatronic. Scott Cawthon did a perfect job blending the two. I mean, he mentions in the previously brought up Kickstarter that he grew up going to these type of places. So he knows a thing or two on how to perfectly design them. On stage during the day, they look really cool. I'd love to go here. But of course, you're not here during the day. And when you see them standing lifeless on stage, it hits the uncanny valley in a strange way. You know they aren't real animatronics. They aren't alive. They can't move on their own volition, which makes it all the more unnerving when they do that. One of the best parts of the game that the other games lose track of is the lighting. It's dull, but the mundanity of it turns okay shots into tense moments of terror. My best example is the West Hall camera. It's just a hallway, nothing special. There's something wrong here. Bonnie. He stood here, but you couldn't see him very well. The animatronics are not stupid. They know that you're aware of them, and they're hiding from you in an attempt that you won't see them. His silhouette makes you lean in, and it's honestly really creepy. Whilst Bonnie doesn't really do this, he only kind of does it once. Freddy does this constantly. He drapes himself in the shadows in places that you can't see him. You can barely see his eyes, so it's a genuine challenge keeping track of him on the monitors. In my footage after a certain point, I just gave up. I thought it wouldn't matter because he's pretty much invisible. So overall, the art style is really nice. In the opposite way you'd think. Most games you want to look beautiful, but this game is the opposite. It is ugly. The textures look rough around the edges. The models look grungy and realistic. There are cobwebs everywhere and the building looks dusty. Foxy is broken down. It all adds to the charm. It's such a 2014 horror game, and I mean that in the best way possible. Again, to bring up Silent Hill, but it reminds me of that a bit, actually. Mainly because of the 90s to 2000s inspiration, with Scott starting as a modeler in the 90s. But what about the gameplay? I mean, that's pretty important for a game, isn't it? Well, to put it bluntly, the gameplay is very good. I feel like people enter this game expecting it to be like Bendy and the Ink Machine or Poppy Playtime, and they're getting it horribly wrong. Fnaf will always disappoint you if you're going into it expecting that brand of mascot horror. You have to remember that this game was focused on making an entertaining and fun gameplay loop, with a focus on strategy rather than a rich story. My advice? Think of Fnaf like a horror remake of Pac-Man. Let me cook. Everyone watching this video has either played Pac-Man or knows how it works, so let me cut to the chase. Let's compare the games. These are strategy survival games where a character is hunted by some malevolent force. They have the means to defend themselves, temporarily mind you, but it comes at a cost. In Fnaf's case, this is literal. I could go into more detail, but still, I don't want to spoil it for now. Obviously, I've spent time comparing, but there are differences. It's not the same game, and Fnaf does enough differently to the point where I want to get in depth with it. Fnaf takes place on a chessboard, with you on one side of the building and threats on the other side, and it's your job to stop the animatronics from getting in your room and ripping you apart like a rabid dog.
Not you, dog. You'd never kill anyone. Except for that homeless man.
There's 3 different scenarios in this game. The first is idle. This is when the threats are totally inactive. You mainly just look through the cameras. This section is mainly distracting yourself until the next scenario begins, which is a lot more interesting. The second is alert. This is when the animatronic begins to make its way towards you. Now, on earlier nights, this might be it. The animatronics might scare you a little, but they don't actually do anything worthwhile. They never make it to the door. And you should be fine. The third is door. This is when, go figure, the animatronics arrive at your door and attempt to worm their way inside the room. All you have to do is... yeah, that. That was actually surprisingly easy. It's a simple gameplay loop, but sometimes simple is more effective than a complex one. It's simple enough so that anyone can pick up and play, but mastering it is certainly not easy, and the end of each night leaves you feeling incredible because of the anxiety-inducing gameplay you just had to endure. The next section contains spoilers for the game. And I know nobody really cares, but I'm gonna get comments about it eventually, so here's your warning. Skip to the timestamp on screen to avoid them. Or go watch your favorite Minecraft YouTuber. Ha, funny! Okay, so the progression in this game is genuinely impressive. The game starts with only 2 animatronics that will frequent your door, that being Bonnie and Chica. Their movement is totally random, and it can really ramp up the tension. I remember on my first playthrough expecting something pretty easy, but no. Bonnie just legged it down the West Hall immediately, which sent me into a panic as I was expecting him to linger around the back of the building for a prolonged period of time. But nope, dude literally just stormed up to the office. And the best bit is that he didn't even go to the door. No, he instead started pacing up and down the corridor and into the supply closet. This rabbit is just fucking with me. Chica is more of the same. The main difference is that she's a lot less aggressive and goes up the East Hall and through the door on the right. Foxy is a totally different beast though, that's for sure. He activates on night 1, but his AI is set to 1, so he is not a threat whatsoever. He really begins to become a tricky shit on night 2. If you don't pay attention to him, then he will leg it down the hallway and tear your eyeballs out of your skull. I didn't pay attention to him for a good while when he proceeded to leg it to me. Luckily, I closed the door in time, which was good, but man, imagine if I got jump scared? This is where the Foxy is a good guy theory stemmed from, isn't it? His jump scare is probably the weakest in the whole game. He literally just stands there. Also, fun fact about the jump scare, the screens in the office actually become reflective during it. I have no clue why. But Freddy's introduction? Perfect. He's kind of moved in the time building up to this, but never off his stage. That changes on night 3, and unlike a lot of games, his mechanic is built up perfectly. It's a combination of all 3 animatronics we've met thus far. He's aggressive like Bonnie, camera sensitive like Foxy, and he goes up the east side like Chica. And he's probably the most fun animatronic to combat because he's a real threat. Scott was really smart with his entrance on night 3. I mean, you're given enough experience in the main gameplay to instinctively be able to counter Freddy in a way that's super rewarding. Oh, but WoofInation, isn't the gameplay meant to gradually be introduced into the flow of the game to help you get to grips with how it works? You would not believe how many Fnaf games throw stupid shit at you in a dull and boring way with zero build-up at all. Oh, hi Fnaf 2. So, overall, the gameplay is pretty freaking solid. Maybe the most robust gameplay in the whole series. I don't know. I am a sucker for Pizza Sim, so maybe if I review that one, I can compare the two. Comment if you want that, I guess. So, time to talk about the story. A riveting proposition, no doubt. But in all seriousness, FNAF 1 is the tightest game in the series, mainly due to its length, with it not being an hour long. Ignore how much time I spent in this game. I did a bunch of playthroughs for this video across Christmas, okay? But honestly, story-wise, it might be my favorite. I mean, at this point, you were just some guy working at a rundown pizza chain. And yet, a lot is done to make this game feel really... real? Grounded? The writing is off the wall, figuratively and literally. I have a hot take for you. You ready to hear it? Alright. Five Nights at Freddy's is a genuinely well-written comedy. No, let me explain. Okay, so there's this Charlie Chaplin quote that basically runs along the lines of, life in close-up is a tragedy, but in long shot, it's a comedy. And I think that applies perfectly to FNAF. When you're in the moment-to-moment gameplay, it's some of the most tense survival horror in a good while. The pressure from the resource management, the creepy murder robots, the hard-to-view monitors, it's pretty scary. Now think of it in the past tense. It's a game about a wacky pizza chain with a bunch of furries that all want to skin you. Meanwhile, you cannot use the doors because the entire building runs on a AA battery, and the company you work with is so comically inept that they are only willing to file a missing persons report within 3 months of the person going missing so that they have time to dispose of the body. Five Nights at Freddy's is the smartest satire of capitalism written since American Psycho. I genuinely never thought I'd be saying that. The phone calls themselves are genuinely really good. Scott's delivery as phone guy is so freaking casual that it wraps back around into being genuinely witty and well-written dialogue. It's just freaking dope, dude.
Hello. Hey, you're doing great. Most people don't last this long. I mean, you know, they usually move on to other things by now. I'm not implying that they died. Let's see. First, there's an introductory greeting from the company that I'm supposed to read. It's kind of a legal thing, you know. Welcome to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a magical place for kids and grown-ups alike, where fantasy and fun come to life. Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for damage to property or person. Upon discovering that damage or death has occurred, a missing person report will be filed within 90 days or as soon as property and premises have been thoroughly cleaned and bleached and the carpets have been replaced. Blah, blah, blah. Now, that might sound bad, I know, but there's really nothing to worry about. Hey, listen, I had an idea. If you happen to get caught and want to avoid getting stuffed into a Freddy suit, try playing dead. You know, go limp. Then there's a chance that maybe they'll think that you're an empty costume instead. Then again, if they think you're an empty costume, they might try to stuff a mental skeleton into you. I wonder how that would work.
The story being so vague leaves a lot up to the imagination, and I really like that. There's no 8-bit minigames or anything, and I kind of prefer that. It's a simple story told in a cryptic and engaging way, and it's an enjoyable experience. And with all that said, that's all I really want to talk about this game. And yeah, FNAF 1 is still good. End of the video, bye! Okay, but in all seriousness, this is a special game for me. And I'm just glad I'm able to go back and review it in a fun manner. Obviously, there's some stuff that's a little flat or wonky with this game, figuratively and literally. The office curves with the camera, what the bitch? But Five Nights 1 is a genuinely really solid experience, and I think it goes up with the likes of stuff like Slender the 8 Pages, Amnesia the Dark Descent, and even SCP Containment Breach. But yeah, that's FNAF. Thanks for watching, I guess.